In 2009, more than 11,000 unopened, untested rape kits were found in a Detroit Police Department storage unit. The kits represented thousands of unprosecuted sexual assault cases and potentially thousands of sex offenders still on the streets. Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Laurel Hess and this is Comcast Newsmakers Extended. Joining me now is Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And since 2009, now when this was discovered, what exactly was done about it? Or here we are, 5, 6 years later, finally testing those kits. Is that correct?
Well, they started testing immediately. So we immediately looked for guidance, and it's a very long story, but we looked for guidance. Finally, we got some guidance through the Office of Violence Against Women, who funded a Project 400. We've been told by statisticians at Michigan State University that if we tested 400 randomly, it would give us a snapshot or a blueprint of what we had, and then we could know how we could proceed. So we did that. And then about a year later, we received a grant from the NIJ, the National Institute of Justice, which is an arm of the Department of Justice in D.C. We had the support of Vice President Biden and Attorney General Eric Holder, and that was almost a $2 million grant. It was a 3-year research grant where we were given 2 missions. 1, to look at the way sexual assault victims are treated throughout the criminal justice system, and 2, to develop a national protocol for entities who found themselves to have the same issue. There are over 400,000 untested rape kits in this country, and we had over 11,000.
Why do a rape kit in the first place if really there was no real procedure in place, seemingly, to actually follow through and use the results of test the kits, use the results, and go through with that prosecution?
Well, as you can imagine, when someone is raped in the most intimate of ways, many women, I'm saying women, but mostly women, don't report. It's a very, very, very low report rate. And then we have even fewer than that decide to go through with the rape kit, which is a 4 to 10 hour, very intimate exam where each and every orifice of a woman's body is looked at and evidence is taken from, in the hopes that as a result of all that, that scientists, forensic scientists, later can find some evidence that we can determine some DNA and hopefully be able to identify a perpetrator. So that's why women go through with the rape kit. And then they're doing this in the hopes that this will solve their case. And then when they find out that their case is basically sitting on a shelf for now as far back as 35 years, then it's letting them down. So that's not the intent, but that's what happened in this case.
And how were they discovered? All of them, obviously, it seems seemingly at once, and nobody had spoken out prior. Because if you do go through a 4 to 10 hour examination, that is, a lot to put yourself through. Nobody then said, hey, why aren't we testing this kit?
No, why no victim ever came, and no victim ever came to us. And so oftentimes we would never even know a rape kit was taken when we received a police report unless it was indicated. And very rarely back then was it ever indicated, so we didn't know. And so no one, as far as I know, ever called us. Now whether anybody called the police department, I do not know. So all I know is that they were shelved and just, on the shelf, abandoned and forgotten.
And now able to possibly make good. There's somewhat of an expense involved, correct, in testing all these, and so is that sort of what has been done over the last several years, raising enough money and awareness to actually make this happen?
All of that, because at the time, my funding authority, Wayne County, Robert Facano was the CEO then, and felt that I should not be doing anything with these kits unless I could raise outside money. And the last time I checked, that was a crime that I was supposed to prosecute, and it's a mandated function. So we got no support from the county at the time. It's different now with Warren Evans at the helm. And so we had to we begged, borrowed, and stole from, not stole, but begged and borrowed from everybody. And Detroit businessmen and businesswomen stepped up in a big way. And as you probably know, Southeastern Michigan has some of the most philanthropic people and helped us out greatly. Of course, we received help from the federal government, as I said, and various grants. And then we did receive, years later, some support from the state of Michigan through the Attorney General and through Governor Schneider and the Michigan legislature, who made available an additional $4 million to be able to test 8,000 more kits. So that was a few years ago, but back in 2009, we were really struggling. We had people sending in $5, $10 to help this effort. So the Detroit Crime Commission came on fairly early on, I think later in 2009, 2010, enacted a fiduciary, and through then we were able to raise some funds. And also, A big part of it was Mariska Hargitay through her foundation, the Joyful Heart Foundation, and her foundation has contributed quite a bit of money as well as help us raise awareness of the issue.
You actually have an entity now called Enough Said.
Yes.
SAID stands for?
Sexual Assault in Detroit. So Enough Sexual Assault in Detroit.
And this organization is sort of like an umbrella unit now if somebody wanted to donate money or help in some way. There's an actual full throttle organization out there trying to help process the rest of these
It's a collaboration between my office, the Michigan Women's Foundation, and the Detroit Crime Commission that I mentioned earlier. And this is the first of its kind, a kind of a public-private partnership. And they are committed to not only raising the funds to test the rest of the kids, and we don't have that many left to test, but also, and this is very, very important, money to investigate and prosecute. It's great to test all the kits, and that was our mission from the very beginning, even kits where the statute of limitation has run, because we can get very good evidence from that as well. But the next step we must take is we must investigate or prosecuting them. You can test them all, but that doesn't bring justice to not one victim. So still these cases, after we get the test results, and if we get a CODIS hit, we can't just run out and arrest somebody. We have to find the perpetrator, we have to find the victim, we have to put the case together the old-fashioned way. And that takes time and is very investigative intensive. So we need many investigators to do that. And then, of course, we need prosecutors to work along with those investigators and prosecute the cases.
So that step has not happened yet, or has it in any cases?
It's beginning slowly. The city of Cleveland, for example, found 4,000 kits after we found ours, and they had 35 investigators and counting. We had 2 up until very, very recently. We had almost 3 times what they had. And so recently, within the last couple of months, the Mayor Duggan has made available 5 Detroit police officers who are working with us embedded in our office, so we have 7. So as soon as these funds come in, we're going to immediately hire many more investigators. We've already interviewed, we have a list available, so as soon as the funds become available, we can bring in more and more investigators, which is what we need.
And what is your ultimate goal or hope? Obviously to maybe get enough hits that you find some perpetrators that have maybe been had multiple offenses?
Well, we've already prosecuted, I believe it's 15 or 16 cases already, and we have multiple cases in the system already. We have 600 cases right now where we have a CODIS hit that we're waiting for an investigator to be assigned. And so it is my hope at the end of all this, and we're projecting 3 to 5 years, my hope is that we can prosecute every case, or investigate every case where there's CODIS hit, and then prosecute those cases where we are able to go forward. So that's my hope. We want to bring justice to as many victims as all the victims that we can. Obviously, all 11,000 cases are not going to result in cases. In many cases, the scientists are not going to be able to find enough in that kit, enough of a profile in that kit to make a profile and enter into CODIS. But all the ones where they have given us information where there's CODIS hit, we want to be able to investigate those cases and prosecute those if we can.
The ones you have been able to investigate, what has been the reaction of the victims, so many years later, coming back and saying, now finally we're going to do this for you?
Well, one thing that we did very early on, as prosecutors, we deal with victims every day, and we consider ourselves experts in dealing with victims, but we knew we were dealing with more than that here. We were potentially going and knocking on doors of women who were raped 5, 10, 15, 35 years ago. And so we enlisted the help very early on, and I think this is what helped us to get us grants of the victim advocacy community, who deals very intimately with victims and knows them better than we do. And so we spent almost a year and a half almost developing a victim notification protocol about step by step, how do we knock on doors and contact and deal with victims who are getting knocks on doors, sometimes decades later, almost a decade later, or decades later. And so we follow that protocol. It involves victim advocates, it involves prosecutors, it involves investigators. And so we've been very sensitive, and we're very proud of that victim notification policy that we've developed.
It sounds like every step of the way, everything that you're doing, you've been doing it correctly, in order, meticulously, making sure we don't sort of screw up again, if you will.
Exactly, with partners, and that's very important. But we've also taken more steps than that. I want to make sure from the very beginning that we fix this issue, no matter how many years it takes, and then we don't find ourselves in the same place 10 years from now. And so we have 2 things, and I don't know if you have time to talk about it now, but 2 things we put in place very quickly that we will ensure that doesn't happen again. One, there was a bill that the governor signed about last year that puts time standards in place.
Let's take a quick break, and then let's talk about both of those things, and then how this has become a model as well outside of the city of Detroit. Okay. Don't go away, we will be right back.
Great shops, great eats, and great places. It's My Destinations, only on Xfinity On Demand. From Detroit to Grand Rapids, now you can check out some of Michigan's greatest destinations. Delicious pizza, Michigan craft beer, great family museums, and so much more. It's easy. Push the On Demand button on your remote, navigate to Get Local, and select My Destinations. It's My Destinations, only on Xfinity On Demand. Another way Comcast stays focused on the community.
The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office has identified 255 serial rapists and has already obtained 15 convictions. Welcome back to this edition of Comcast Newsmakers Extended. Speaking again with Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy. You were mentioning two things that really are helping in this effort to get these kits tested. The governor has now gotten involved.
Right. We want to make sure this didn't happen again. So we, last year he signed a House bill, and it puts in time standards, and this is statewide, it's not just the city of Detroit, where it puts in time standards where law enforcement has a certain number of days, I believe it's 14, to pick up the kits from the sexual assault examiners, or in some parts of the state that don't have those nurse examiners, from the hospitals or the clinics, whoever does them. That particular police agent has to pick them up within 14 days, and then they have a certain number of days to get them to the crime lab. The crime lab has a certain number of days to test them, assuming that they have the resources to do so. So again, that's one attempt to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But we want to take that a step further. We always said from the very beginning that if you can order a package from Amazon.com and go on your computer or your phone, or your smartphone, and track it and find out where it is at all times, we ought to be able to track a rape kit from the time it leaves the forensic nurse examiners all the way through the system. So we're working in a partnership with United Parcel Service, UPS, and Quicken Loans down Gilbert. At no cost to the taxpayers, they are footing the bill themselves. Wow. And this is a test or a draft program, a pilot program is the word I'm looking for the city of Detroit. And we've already begun that process, and we're hoping this will go statewide and even nationwide. So with those two things in effect, we hope that there will never again be any reason for there to be untested, unprocessed rape kits in this country.
Do you see that happening now as rape kits have been coming in over the last several months? Are they being tested and put through the system in a timely manner?
Well, since the bill passed, they've had to do that when the bill started. I believe it was January 1st. But when we discovered this issue back in August of '09, post-August of '09, the commitment was made to us by the Detroit Police Department that they would test every kit. And so we made attempts very quickly to make sure that this didn't happen again.
So now just sort of making sure statewide this happens as well. Obviously, you are a model, hopefully, with the things that the improvements that have been made for other communities, not just in Michigan, but perhaps nationwide.
Well, as a result of the NIJ grant that we received, there was a report that came out last month, and it was released to the press. I believe the executive summary was, I think, 12 pages about our process and about a national protocol. The report is 500 pages, and you can go to the National Institute of Justice website and read that report if you like. But it talks about all kinds of things: how this happened, how to prevent it, and what should happen, what should be done by entities that find this again. So that was money very well spent. But there are a number of other things that we're working on as well. And I think, as you read, we have now identified 255 serial rapists. The testing is not even completed yet, so we expect that number to go much higher. But even more important than that, and that's just serial rapists, people who've raped more than once. And rapists, I don't know if you know, rape on average 11 times. So every time you take one rapist off the street, you are really preventing 10 more rapes. And so we're working on that. But also we have CODIS hits that connect to 30 other states and 2 federal agencies. So our rape kits that were found, there have been CODIS hits that have been tied to 30 other states, more than half of the states in the United States. This is not a Detroit-only problem.
I was going to say, for everybody who thinks like, oh, here it is, Detroit, Michigan, Wayne County, we're coming in first and something bad again, it really isn't just our
We want to be first
city
to solve our problem. But this is not a Detroit-only problem. It never has been. In fact, the day that I found out, I went home and Googled 10,000 kits because we thought we had about 10,000. We didn't know the exact number until later, and it started popping up all over the country. So they've had this issue in almost every state, and we've also gotten calls from Australia and from Britain as well. So it's a national issue. And like I said earlier, it's estimated, the research has said that it's estimated to be over 400,000 untested, unprocessed rape kits in this country. And I went to the University of Michigan, and that has the biggest football stadium, either professional or college. And each of those kits represents a victim. And that 400,000 is enough to fill up the big house 4 times over. So that's how many we have. And so this is a huge problem, a huge issue. But I'd like to thank, the Michigan Women's Foundation, the Detroit Crime Commission, and all the businessmen and women, and all the people who have sent in money. Carolyn Cassin will tell you when she comes up, I know she's coming after me, that we have received donations from $5 up to $25,000, wow. And from all 50 states and many, many foreign countries. And so this is an international issue, and people all over the world have pitched in to help us. You
mentioned earlier with the new bill that was signed by the governor that there's this time constraint that folks need to adhere by, provided they have the resources. That must be a big part of the problem, is that some police departments, some communities, we're all cash strapped, don't have the resources. Is somebody looking into, you mentioned you may be getting another 5 police officers dedicated to this.
We've gotten 5 from, yeah.
How do you ensure that that police and prosecutor's office do have the resources they need in order to carry this through?
If I could answer that question, I wouldn't have had the issues I've had for the past 2 years going into this next year, because we still don't have the resources. There's actually another side indirect backlog, because we have cases now sitting waiting to be investigated. But the bill states that as long as the lab has the resources to test them, there is no excuse for the police not picking them up from the forensic nurses, or the police not transporting them to the lab. It's specifically built in to say if the lab doesn't have the resources to test them, because it takes a lot of money, time, and energy and resource to do so. And so this state, I think, has been very progressive. And I think since this issue was discovered and since the state did step up, things are being put in place to make sure that the lab, and I hope this continues, has the funds that they need. We partner with them on certain grants as well. So we do everything that we can to make sure they have the resources as well. So this is and just because we're part of Enough Said, my office and Detroit Crime Commission and the Michigan Women's Foundation not only are trying to get money from private partnerships, but we also they're helping me to leverage more money from state, local, and federal public dollars as well.
Well, and let's go back a step further. How big of an issue is this because of a lack of awareness, or maybe the culture of women's issues not being treated quite on par as fair with men's issues? Because it's not that all DNA from all crimes were not tested. It was specifically
This would never happen in a homicide case.
Exactly.
Right? It would never happen in a homicide case or a robbery case. And this has been the age-old question. I think it's many reasons, and this is globally, not putting the spotlight on DPD, Detroit Police Department. This is globally. I call sexual assault the stepchild of violent crime. And yes, I think it's because it's mainly a women's issue, although it's not just women are raped, children are raped, men are raped too. But until we change the culture of how this country looks at sexual assault and victim blaming and everything else that happens, even by law enforcement, that happens in this country, things are going to be slow to change. I think it is changing now. We're glad to be a part of that. We're certainly pushing for that. And that was part of the focus and the aim and the mandate from the federal government that gave us those dollars to look at that. And that report that I talked about from the NIJ addresses that issue as well.
And part of what your mission is through this Enough Said organization is to raise awareness?
Oh, raising awareness is a big part of it. And of course, a big part of it is, like I said, they have committed to raising $10 million for the investigation and prosecution of these cases. I don't know what the final stats are going to be. I know they're already much more than we thought they would be. And we are slowly but surely bringing justice to these victims.
So overall, obviously, success, win-win. You're happy with the results over the last 5-6 years since these were discovered?
Well, I wish we could have done it faster if we had the resources. That would have been great. But I'm really happy with everybody that's come on board. I'm ecstatic about this new partnership. But I just don't want this to happen again, because if this region is not safe, people are not going to come. And if they come, they're not going to stay. And that's why it's enough said, enough sexual assault in Detroit. We want it to stop, and this is going to be a big way of making sure that we don't have the rape that we've had here before.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful organization, and hopefully folks are learning about this if they want to help. I know you need money more than volunteers, but
Enough Said Detroit, one word, .org.
It's where they can go for more information. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Coming up next, Carolyn Cassin, the president and CEO of the Michigan Women's Foundation, will join us. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
You've seen Comcast Newsmakers on CNN Headline News. Now you can watch them on Xfinity On Demand. It's easy. Push the On Demand button on your remote. Navigate to Get Local and select Comcast Newsmakers. Now you can watch in-depth interviews with politicians, public officials, and community leaders at your convenience. It's Comcast Newsmakers on Xfinity On Demand. Another way Comcast stays focused on the community.
Based on its 29-year history of leading important initiatives on behalf of the state's women and girls, the Michigan Women's Foundation is leading the critical fundraising campaign for Enough Said. Welcome back to this edition of Comcast Newsmakers Extended. Joining me now is the president and CEO of the Michigan Women's Foundation, Carolyn Cassin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
How did you and your organization initially become involved, become interested in this overall effort and collaboration?
As you indicated in your opening, we have a long history of being involved in important issues. And when Kim Worthy came to us over a year ago and said that this was an important issue, our board and our foundation struggled with whether or not we had the resources to be able to do that. Fortunately, Kim had talked with a lot of other people, and they came together and said, we would like the Michigan Women's Foundation to lead this effort, and we will help you by investing some infrastructure resources so that you can actually put some full-time people on this effort. And that was the tipping point. That was the miracle that we needed to actually turn this into a reality.
And it is a collaborative effort. You're one of 3 entities involved. What more precisely is your role? What are you doing to help the Enough Said organization?
It's our role to lead the fundraising effort. This is an incredibly expensive effort. You can imagine having to go back and test 11,000 kids. Once they're tested, as Kim always says over and over again, testing doesn't bring anybody any justice. So we need to investigate whether or not these cases can be prosecuted. If they can be prosecuted, we need to prosecute them. And Kim really needs the resources to do that. There aren't any resources in any budget to go back and test something from 30 years ago and to go back and actually bring justice to a victim. So this is going to cost millions and millions of dollars over a long period of time. And so the Michigan Women's Foundation has committed ourselves to making sure that people all over this state and this country actually know about this. We want everyone in the state of Michigan to care about this, and then we are going to be leading the fundraising effort. First with the private private entities. We've been going to people who care about the safety of Detroit, and we've been asking them to get involved. And so there are thousands of people that are involved in this effort. People have given everything from $5 to $25,000 to one very generous supporter who gave $500,000.
Wow.
So this is a campaign that touches every woman and, frankly, any man who cares about making sure that women are safe. We're also helping in the public sector. There are federal dollars that Kim can access. There are state dollars that the prosecutor's office has already been allocated, and so we're going to continue to keep putting all these dollars together over the next 3 to 5 years to make sure that we bring justice to these victims of sexual assault.
And it's a financial investment that's well worth it as well. Not only are you going to bring justice to the victims, make the streets of the city of Detroit and certainly other communities where people have been taken off the streets of other states safer. But my understanding, while it costs a lot of money, it can cost up to $1,500 per rape kit if you get through the entire process of a conviction and all the investigation, up to $8,000. But if you would have to incarcerate somebody and over and over and over again, the statistics show that you're saving maybe $240,000 over the course of somebody's life by getting this, going through this process now. So investment-wise, you're saving in the long run cash dollars as well.
It's a huge, huge investment in the safety of women and the safety of Detroit, and making sure that this is a place where everybody can come and live and work and play. And that's what's really important here. And that's why we're leading this effort. And we're excited that people from all over the United States are interested in this. They understand it. We're not the only jurisdiction that has untested rape kits. So we want people to know about it, and thank you for letting us talk about it.
Well, so the City of Detroit, your organization, really a model right now for a lot of other communities going through the same thing just a little bit later, looking to see how we're handling it. And it sounds like while the mistake was made way back when, once it was discovered, everything has been done correctly since.
We feel very confident. In fact, we wouldn't have gotten involved in this if we didn't feel that that there was a permanent solution to this. One of the things that our board members said was, if this is going to happen, if we're going to turn around, test all these kits, and then bring these women to bring these rapists to justice for women, we are not going to then turn around and find there are 11,000 more somewhere else. So we have worked very, very closely with Kim to make sure, and the prosecutor's office, and the state, and the governor, and the attorney general, just to make sure that this is not ever going to happen again. And we know that that's the case now. There's a law in place that was passed last June that makes sure that there are time frames upon which people have to test these rape kits.
And one of your main goals from your organization is social and economic equality for women, and obviously this just fits so nicely into that envelope.
It does. The Michigan Women's Foundation has really three things that we try to put all of our efforts towards. You know, first the bringing up of the next generation of young women leaders in this state for our youth programming, and then the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative. But most importantly, it's really to lead the state's women's agenda. There are issues that matter to all of us, and whether these happen to be rape kits that were all found in Detroit, these kits make a difference to everyone, because as Kim says, a rapist doesn't rape once; they rape 11 times before they're caught and brought to be responsible for this case. So this is really important for us for all of us who want to live in a society where injustices against women don't get put on the back shelf and not be taken care of.
Well, now with the new law that's been passed, with some of the due diligence that's been being done, do you feel as though the women, at least in Metro Detroit and Michigan, are being better served today?
We do, but we still feel that there are these 11,000 kits, only which about 2,000 of them have had the kits fully tested and prosecuted. Right now, Kim says that she has 630 cases where she has hits, they know who the perpetrator was, and she just needs the resources to go after those rapists. And so, you know, and that's just from the next couple thousand of them. So this is going to be a rolling issue for years to come. So we'll be back to talk about it.
Changing all the time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for all your hard work and involvement with the organization.
Thank you.
For more information on Enough Said, you can visit their website, which is enoughsaiddetroit.org. I'd like to thank Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy and Carolyn Cassin for joining me on this special edition of Comcast Newsmakers Extended, and thank you as well for watching.